The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Grandmont Hotel, casting golden light across the marble floors. Maya walked beside her mother through the service entrance, her worn backpack bouncing against her shoulders. It was Saturday, which meant her mom had to work the weekend shift, and Maya always tagged along during school breaks. At 15, Maya had learned to make herself invisible in places like this. She knew which hallways to use, which areas to avoid, and how to stay out of everyone's way, while her mother cleaned rooms and prepared the banquet halls for fancy events. Today was different, though. Today there was going to be a huge charity gala, and the entire hotel buzzed with activity. "Stay in the break room, baby," her mother said, adjusting her uniform. "I've got to help set up the ballroom, and it's going to be crazy around here. Rich folks don't like seeing us unless they need something." Maya nodded, but she'd heard this speech 100 times before. Her mother worried too much. She watched her mom disappear down the corridor with her cleaning cart. Then Maya pulled out her phone. She had 2 hours to kill, maybe 3 if the setup took longer than expected. But sitting in that cramped break room felt suffocating today. Maya wandered through the service corridors, listening to the sounds of preparation echoing through the building. She'd been working on a new piece at the community center where she took piano lessons every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Mrs. Chen, her teacher, said she had something special, though Maya never quite believed it. How could someone like her, who learned to play on a donated keyboard in a church basement, have anything special? The music in her head grew louder as she walked. Her fingers moved unconsciously, playing invisible keys in the air. She turned a corner and found herself near the main ballroom. The double doors stood partially open, and she couldn't help but peek inside. Her breath caught in her throat. There, on the stage at the far end of the massive room, sat the most beautiful piano she had ever seen. Its black surface gleamed under the chandeliers, polished to such perfection that it looked like liquid glass. Maya had only ever seen pianos like this in videos online or through shop windows she'd never dare enter. She glanced around. The ballroom was empty. Workers were busy in other parts of the hotel, and nobody was paying attention to this particular room right now. Her heart pounded as she slipped inside, her sneakers silent on the plush carpet. Maya approached the piano like it was something holy. She ran her fingertips along its smooth edge, barely breathing. Up close, she could see the name Steinway written in elegant gold letters. She'd read about these pianos, about how they were handcrafted and cost more money than her family would see in 5 years. Just one song, she thought. Just to know what it feels like. She sat down on the bench, her hands trembling slightly as they hovered over the keys. Then she began to play. The first notes rang out clear and pure, filling the enormous space with sound. Maya closed her eyes and let the music take over. This was the piece she'd been practicing, the one that told a story without words. Her fingers moved with growing confidence, dancing across the keys like they'd been waiting their whole life for this moment. The piano responded to her touch like magic. Every note was crisp and full, so different from the electronic keyboard at the community center that had 3 broken keys and a volume knob that stuck. Here the sound seemed to wrap around her, lifting her up. She forgot where she was, forgot everything except the music flowing through her. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice cut through the music like a knife. Maya's hands froze on the keys, her eyes snapping open. A man stood at the edge of the stage, and everything about him screamed money. His suit probably cost more than her mom's monthly rent. His watch caught the light, all gold and gleaming. But it was his face that made Maya's stomach drop, the cold anger written there. I was just... Maya started to stand up, her voice barely a whisper. "You were just what? Touching a $100,000 piano with your dirty hands?" The man climbed onto the stage, his footsteps heavy with authority. "Do you have any idea what this instrument is worth? Do you?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to what?" "Trespass. Break into a private event space." He looked her up and down, his lip curling. "Where did you even come from? Who let you in here?" Maya's face burned with shame. "My mom works here. She's a housekeeper. I was just waiting for her and I saw the piano and I just wanted to... Your mother is a housekeeper." The man said it like it explained everything, like it was all he needed to know about her. "So you thought you'd just help yourself to whatever you wanted? Figured nobody would notice if you came in here and played around with equipment meant for actual musicians?" "I am a musician," Maya said quietly, finding a tiny spark of courage. "I take lessons." "I've been playing for 4 years," the man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lessons at where?" The public school? Some community center? He shook his head. This piano is meant for professionals. People who've trained at real conservatories who actually understand the value of what they're touching. Not for people like you. People like you. The words hung in the air like poison. I understand value, Maya said, her voice shaking. I understand music. That's why you understand nothing. The man pulled out his phone. Security? Yes, Richard Caldwell here. I need you to send someone to the grand ballroom immediately. We have an intruder. He looked at Maya while he talked. A young girl, maybe 15 or 16. She's been tampering with the equipment. Please, Maya said, panic rising in her chest. Please don't. My mom will get in trouble. She needs this job. Please, I'll leave right now. I promise I won't. Should have thought about that before you decided to break the rules, Richard said coldly. He kept his phone to his ear. Yes, and find out which staff member brought her in. The mother, apparently. Works in housekeeping. I want them both dealt with. Tears stung Maya's eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't cry in front of this man. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. 2 security guards arrived within minutes, their faces uncomfortable when they saw Maya standing there. Clearly not any kind of threat. Behind them came her mother, her face pale with terror. Baby, what did you do? Her mother whispered. I found her playing the piano, Richard announced to the gathering crowd of hotel staff and a few early arriving guests. Completely unauthorized. This is exactly the kind of thing that happens when people don't respect boundaries. Maya's mother grabbed her hand. I'm so sorry, sir. She didn't mean any harm. She loves music. I don't care what she loves, Richard interrupted. This is a 5-star establishment. We have standards to maintain. Would you let just anyone walk into an operating room and start performing surgery? This is the same principle. It's not the same at all, Maya said, her voice stronger now despite the tears threatening to fall. Music is for everyone. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like or how much money you have. Music doesn't care about any of that. Richard's eyes narrowed. Music is for everyone? Is that what they taught you at your little community center? He turned to the hotel manager who had just arrived. I want both of them removed from the premises, immediately. And I want them banned from this property. If they're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm pulling my donation from tonight's gala, all $500,000 of it. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya felt her mother's hand tighten around hers, felt her whole body trembling. This job was everything to them. It paid for their apartment, for food, for Maya's piano lessons that her mother saved for month after month. And now it was all falling apart because Maya couldn't resist touching something beautiful. The hotel manager cleared his throat. Mrs. Johnson, perhaps it would be best if you took the rest of the day off. We can discuss this further on Monday. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a dismissal, polite but firm, and everyone in that room knew it. Maya and her mother walked out of the ballroom together, past the staring faces, past the whispers that followed them down the hallway. Maya's last glimpse of the grand ballroom was Richard Caldwell standing on that stage next to the piano, looking satisfied with himself, like he'd just done something noble instead of crushing a young girl's spirit. Neither Maya nor her mother spoke until they reached the bus stop outside. Then her mother pulled her close and Maya finally let the tears fall, crying not just for herself but for the unfairness of a world where people like Richard Caldwell could treat others as less than human simply because they had more money. She had no way of knowing that this was only the beginning of her story, not the end. The bus ride home felt like it lasted forever. Maya sat pressed against the window, watching the city blur past through tears she kept trying to wipe away. Her mother hadn't said a word since they left the hotel, just held Maya's hand tight like she was afraid to let go. When they finally reached their apartment building, a tired 3-story walk-up in a neighborhood where people minded their own business, Maya's mother spoke for the first time. It's not your fault, baby. But it was. Maya knew it was. Her mother might lose her job because Maya couldn't control herself around a piano, because she'd wanted, just for a few minutes, to feel what it was like to play something beautiful. Inside their small apartment, Maya went straight to her room and closed the door. She could hear her mother on the phone in the kitchen, her voice worried as she talked to someone from the hotel. Maya threw herself onto her bed, burying her face in her pillow. She must have fallen asleep because the next thing she knew, someone was knocking on her door. The room was darker now, late afternoon sun casting long shadows across her walls. Maya, Mrs. Chen is here to see you. Maya sat up quickly. Mrs. Chen. Her piano teacher never came to their apartment. They always met at the community center for lessons. She opened the door to find Mrs. Chen standing in their tiny living room, her kind face creased with concern. The older woman was small and thin, always dressed neatly even though Maya knew she didn't have much money either. She'd been teaching piano for 40 years, mostly to kids whose parents couldn't afford fancy music schools. "Your mother called me," Mrs. Chen said gently. "She told me what happened." Maya felt fresh tears burning behind her eyes. "I ruined everything. Mom might lose her job because I was stupid and touched something I shouldn't have touched." "You weren't stupid," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "You're a musician. Asking a musician not to play when they see a beautiful instrument is like asking a bird not to sing. It's in your nature." That man didn't think I was a musician. He thought I was just some kid who didn't belong there. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and sat down on the couch, patting the space beside her. "Come here. I need to show you something." Maya sat down reluctantly. Mrs. Chen opened her phone and pulled up a folder of videos. Maya recognized them immediately. They were recordings of her playing at recitals and practice sessions at the community center. "I've been sending these to people," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "What people?" "Competition organizers, scholarship programs, music schools." Mrs. Chen looked at her with serious eyes. "Maya, you have something special. Real talent isn't about money or fancy schools. It's about feeling, about connection. You have that. I've been teaching for 4 decades and I've had hundreds of students. Maybe 5 had what you have." Maya stared at the videos on the screen. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to get your hopes up until something came through. These programs get thousands of applications. The odds are," she trailed off. "But I believe in you. I've always believed in you." Maya's mother brought them tea, her hands still shaking slightly. The 3 of them sat together in the fading light, not saying much, just being present for each other. It was the kind of comfort that didn't need words. What none of them knew was that someone else had recorded what happened that morning. A young server named Kyle had been setting up tables in the balcony section of the ballroom when Richard Caldwell started yelling. Kyle had pulled out his phone and captured the whole confrontation, his hands shaking with anger as he watched a grown man humiliate a young girl. For 2 weeks, Kyle watched that video on his phone, unsure what to do with it. He needed his job at the hotel. He had student loans to pay and rent due every month. But every time he watched Richard Caldwell's cruel face, every time he heard him say, "People like you," something burned in his chest. Finally, Kyle made a decision. He created an anonymous account and uploaded the video with a simple caption, "Is this what privilege looks like?" He posted it late at night and went to bed, expecting maybe a few friends would see it. Maybe it would make a few people angry, and that would be that. He had no idea what he'd just started. By morning, the video had 10,000 views. By noon, it had hit 100,000. People were sharing it everywhere, their comments filled with outrage and support for the young girl who'd been treated so cruelly. By evening, it had gone viral, spreading across every social media platform like wildfire. The internet did what the internet does. People dug into who Richard Caldwell was. They found his company website, his social media profiles, his charitable foundation that suddenly seemed a lot less charitable. They started leaving reviews on his businesses, calling out his behavior, demanding accountability. The local news picked it up. Then the national news. "Millionaire humiliates young pianist," read the headlines. "Watch this man destroy a teenager's dreams over a piano." Maya knew nothing about any of this. She'd been avoiding her phone, avoiding social media, trying to make herself small and invisible like always. Her mother had gotten a call from the hotel on Monday saying they needed to discuss the situation, which didn't sound promising. It was Tuesday, time for Maya's regular piano lesson, and she almost didn't go. She felt like she'd somehow betrayed music itself by causing such a mess. But her mother insisted, practically pushing her out the door. The community center was unusually busy when Maya arrived. People kept looking at her strangely, whispering to each other. Maya felt her anxiety spike. Did everyone know what happened? Was she about to face more humiliation? Mrs. Chen met her at the door with an expression Maya couldn't read. "Come with me, quickly." They didn't go to the usual practice room. Instead, Mrs. Chen led her to the center director's office, where a tall man with gray hair and warm brown eyes stood waiting. He wore a simple sweater and jeans, but something about the way he carried himself suggested importance. Maya, Mrs. Chen said, her voice trembling with barely contained excitement. This is Dr. Vincent Hayes. He's a concert pianist and conductor. Maya's eyes widened. She knew that name. Everyone who studied piano knew that name. Dr. Vincent Hayes had performed at Carnegie Hall, at the Royal Albert Hall in London, at concert venues around the world. He'd won competitions, recorded albums, taught at prestigious universities, and he was standing in the community center looking at her. Maya, he said, his voice gentle despite his fame. I saw the video. Her heart sank. Of course he had. Everyone had probably seen it by now. Her humiliation was complete. I also, he continued, found some videos of you playing. Mrs. Chen sent them to me months ago, actually, for a young performers program I run. I was already interested. But after seeing what happened to you, after seeing how that man treated you, he paused, his jaw tight. I had to meet you in person. Maya didn't know what to say. This couldn't be real. People like Dr. Vincent Hayes didn't come to places like this, didn't seek out girls like her. Would you play something for me? He asked, gesturing to the old upright piano in the corner of the office. Maya's hands were shaking so badly she could barely walk to the piano. This was Dr. Vincent Hayes. This was someone who actually mattered in the music world, whose opinion could change everything or destroy what little confidence she had left. She sat down at the familiar piano, its keys worn smooth by thousands of students over the years. She placed her hands on the keys and took a breath. Then she played. She played the same piece she'd been playing that morning at the hotel, the one Richard Caldwell had interrupted. But this time she played it all the way through. She poured everything into it, all her hurt and anger and hope and love for music. She played like it was the last time she'd ever touch a piano. When the final notes faded, Maya kept her eyes closed, afraid to see Dr. Hayes's reaction. That was remarkable, he said quietly, then louder with more force. That was absolutely remarkable. Maya opened her eyes to find him smiling, genuine warmth radiating from his face. I'm organizing a concert series featuring young talents from diverse backgrounds. It's meant to showcase musicians who might not get opportunities through traditional channels. He pulled a chair over and sat down, meeting her eyes directly. I want you to open the series. The first performance is in 3 weeks at Symphony Hall. Would you be interested? Maya couldn't breathe. Symphony Hall was legendary. Professional musicians performed there. Famous orchestras. International stars. I'm not ready for something like that, she stammered. I disagree, Dr. Hayes said. You have raw talent, yes, but more importantly, you have something that can't be taught. You have soul. You play with genuine emotion. That's what makes great music, not expensive schools or fancy pianos. Mrs. Chen was crying, actually crying, tears streaming down her face. I know you've been hurt, Dr. Hayes continued. I know that man tried to make you feel small, like you didn't deserve to play. But I'm here to tell you that you do deserve it. You deserve to be heard, and I want to help make that happen. Maya looked at her teacher, then back at Dr. Hayes. This was impossible. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. But maybe, just maybe, they could. Okay, Maya whispered. Then stronger. Okay, yes, I'll do it. Dr. Hayes's smile grew wider. Excellent. We have a lot of work to do and not much time. Are you ready to work harder than you've ever worked before? For the first time in 2 weeks, Maya felt something other than shame and sadness. She felt hope. Yes, she said. I'm ready. The next 3 weeks became a blur of piano keys and sheet music. Maya practiced until her fingers ached, until the notes haunted her dreams. Dr. Hayes worked with her every other day, pushing her in ways Mrs. Chen never had. Not because Mrs. Chen wasn't a good teacher, but because Dr. Hayes was preparing Maya for something bigger than a community center recital. You're thinking too much, he'd say when her playing got stiff. Stop trying to be perfect. Just feel the music. Let it move through you. It was harder than it sounded. Every time Maya sat at the piano, she heard Richard Caldwell's voice in her head. People like you. She'd freeze up, her confidence crumbling, Dr. Hayes noticed. Of course he did. During their 4th session, he stopped her in the middle of a piece. What are you afraid of? He asked. I'm not afraid, Maya lied. Yes, you are. You're playing like someone who's scared of making mistakes, like someone who thinks they don't belong. He pulled up a chair beside the piano bench. Can I tell you something about my first big performance? Maya nodded, grateful for the break. I was 19, performing at a major competition. I was the only black pianist in the finals. The only one who'd come from a poor neighborhood, who'd learned on a beaten-up piano in a church basement just like you. He smiled at her surprise. Yes, I know what that's like. Anyway, I walked out on that stage and saw thousands of faces staring at me. And you know what I thought? What? I thought, they're all waiting for me to fail. They're waiting to prove that someone like me doesn't belong here. He paused. And then I realized something. My music doesn't care where I came from. The notes don't change based on the color of my skin or the size of my bank account. Music is the one place where we're all equal, where talent is the only thing that matters. But what if I mess up? Maya asked quietly. What if I prove that man was right about me? That man will never be right about you no matter what happens on that stage. But Maya, I need you to understand something. Dr. Hayes looked at her intently. You're not playing to prove him wrong. You're not playing for revenge or to make a point. You're playing because you love music. That's the only reason that matters. His words stayed with her during every practice session after that. Meanwhile, the video continued to spread across the internet like a storm that wouldn't die down. Richard Caldwell's face had become a symbol of everything people hated about privilege and discrimination. His company's phone lines were flooded with angry calls. Protest groups showed up outside his office building. Major clients started pulling their contracts. Richard tried to control the damage. His PR team released a statement saying the video lacked context, that security protocols had simply been followed. But nobody was buying it. The video was clear. His words were clear. There was no context that could make what he did acceptable. At home, his wife Lauren was barely speaking to him. She'd returned from a business trip to find their lives turned upside down. Her husband's face plastered across social media as the villain in a story that made her sick to her stomach. How could you? She asked him one night, her voice cold. How could you treat a child that way? I was protecting hotel property, Richard said defensively. That piano cost a fortune. She had no business touching it. She was playing it, Richard, not breaking it. Playing it, Lauren shook her head. You know what I can't stop thinking about? That could have been me. Before I met you, before I had money, that could have been me getting humiliated by someone who thought I didn't matter. Richard had known his wife grew up poor, that she'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, but he'd somehow forgotten what that meant, what she must have faced along the way. This isn't about class, he insisted. This is about rules and respect. No, Lauren said quietly. This is about you forgetting that people's worth isn't measured by their bank account. And I don't know if I can forgive you for that. She started sleeping in the guest room after that conversation. The pressure kept building. Richard's business partners suggested he make a public apology. His lawyers advised the same. But Richard's pride wouldn't let him. He convinced himself that if he just waited it out, people would forget and move on to the next controversy. Then, he learned about the concert. It came up during a business lunch where his colleagues were discussing the situation. Someone mentioned that the girl from the video was performing at Symphony Hall, that tickets had sold out in hours, that the media was covering it as a triumph over adversity story. Symphony Hall? Richard repeated. That's prestigious. They don't just let anyone perform there. Apparently, Dr. Vincent Hayes is producing the concert, his colleague said. It's part of some series highlighting undiscovered talent. The girl is opening for him. Richard felt something twist in his stomach. Vincent Hayes was world-renowned. If he thought the girl had talent, then maybe... But no. Richard pushed the thought away. He'd been right to stop her from playing that piano. He'd been protecting valuable property. Still, the doubt lingered. Lauren found out about the concert, too. She bought a ticket without telling Richard, determined to see for herself what this young girl could do. She needed to understand why her husband had felt so threatened by a 15-year-old with a dream. As the concert date approached, the media attention intensified. Reporters wanted to interview Maya, to hear her side of the story. Dr. Hayes and Mrs. Chen shielded her from most of it, letting her focus on preparation. But a few interviews happened, small ones, where Maya spoke quietly about her love for music and how she just wanted to play. Her humility made the story even more powerful. She wasn't angry or vengeful. She didn't call for Richard Caldwell to be destroyed. She just talked about piano keys and melodies and how music made her feel alive. The community center where Maya took lessons started receiving donations. Thousands of dollars poured in from people who wanted to support young musicians who couldn't afford expensive training. Mrs. Chen cried when she saw the numbers, thinking about all the kids she could help now. Maya's mother got a call from the hotel. The manager apologized profusely and offered her job back, along with a promotion and a raise. It turned out that the hotel's corporate office had seen the video and were horrified by how their staff had been pressured to treat the situation. They wanted to make amends. "You don't have to decide right now," the manager said. "Take your time. Think about it." Maya's mother told her about the offer that evening while Maya practiced. "Are you going to take it?" Maya asked, her hand still on the keys. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants to prove I can hold my head high there, but another part never wants to see that place again. You should do whatever makes you happy, Mom. We'll be okay either way." Her mother smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," Maya said, and she wasn't talking about piano. The night before the concert, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through every piece she'd be performing. Dr. Hayes had helped her choose a program that showcased different styles, from classical to contemporary. But the final piece was something special, something she'd been working on herself. She called it Unsilenced, and it was her story in musical form. It started soft and uncertain, like those first moments at the hotel piano. Then it grew darker, capturing the humiliation and pain. But it didn't end there. The melody climbed higher, becoming stronger and more confident until it burst into something triumphant and free. Dr. Hayes had been amazed when she first played it for him. "Did you compose this yourself?" "It just came to me," Maya admitted. "Late at night when I couldn't sleep. I started hearing the notes in my head." "It's brilliant," he said simply. "This is what you'll close with. This is what people need to hear." Now, hours before she'd perform it for a real audience, Maya felt terror and excitement warring in her chest. Tomorrow she'd walk onto that stage at Symphony Hall. Tomorrow hundreds of people would hear her play. Critics would be there. Musicians. People who actually understood what they were listening to. And somewhere in the audience might be people who thought she didn't belong, who thought she wasn't good enough, who thought she should have stayed quiet and invisible. But she also knew her mother would be there. Mrs. Chen would be there. Dr. Hayes would be there. And thousands of people who'd seen that video and wanted her to succeed. Maya got out of bed and went to the kitchen, where her mother was still awake, drinking tea and looking worried. "Can't sleep either?" her mother asked. Maya shook her head and sat down. "Mom, whatever happens tomorrow, thank you. For everything. For working so hard so I could take piano lessons. For believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Baby, you're going to be amazing tomorrow. And even if you weren't, even if you got up there and forgot every note, I'd still be the proudest mother in that whole building. You know why? Why? Because you didn't let that man break you. You could have given up on music. Could have decided he was right about you not belonging. But you didn't. You kept going. That takes more courage than playing any piano." Maya felt tears on her cheeks, but they were good tears this time. "Now go get some sleep," her mother said gently. "Tomorrow you're going to show the world what you can do." Maya went back to her room and climbed into bed. This time she fell asleep within minutes, her dreams filled not with worry but with music. The morning of the concert arrived with perfect autumn sunshine streaming through Maya's bedroom window. She woke up early, her heart already pounding, and for a moment she wondered if she could call the whole thing off, pretend to be sick, just disappear. But then she heard her mother humming in the kitchen, making breakfast like this was any normal day, and Maya knew she couldn't back out. Too many people were counting on her now. Mrs. Chen arrived at 9 to help Maya prepare. She brought a dress, simple but elegant, deep blue like the evening sky. "My daughter wore this to her college graduation," she said softly. "I'd be honored if you wore it tonight." Maya tried it on and it fit perfectly, like it had been made for her. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. She looked older somehow, more serious. "You look beautiful," her mother said from the doorway, and her voice broke a little. They arrived at Symphony Hall 3 hours before the performance. Maya needed time to rehearse on the actual stage, to get comfortable with the space and the piano she'd be playing. Dr. Hayes met them at the artist entrance, his usual calm presence somehow making everything feel less terrifying. "Ready?" he asked. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Walking through the backstage area felt surreal. They passed dressing rooms with names on the doors, professional musicians warming up, staff members rushing around with clipboards and headsets. Everyone seemed to know exactly what they were doing except Maya. Then they reached the stage entrance and Dr. Hayes led her through the curtains. Maya stopped breathing. The hall was enormous. Row after row of red velvet seats stretched back and up, 3 levels of balconies wrapping around the space. Massive chandeliers hung from the ceiling like crystal stars, and there, in the center of the stage under a spotlight, sat a concert grand piano that made the one at the hotel look ordinary. "It's a Steinway Model D," Dr. Hayes said, watching her face. "One of the finest instruments in the world. Go ahead, try it." Maya's legs felt shaky as she walked across the stage. The space was so big, so open. Tonight, every one of those thousands of seats would be filled with people watching her, judging her, deciding if she was good enough to be here. She sat at the piano bench and placed her hands on the keys. They felt cool and smooth under her fingers. She pressed down gently, and the sound that came out was like liquid gold, rich and pure and absolutely perfect. "Play something," Dr. Hayes encouraged from the edge of the stage. Maya started with scales, just warming up. But even the scales sounded beautiful on this instrument. Then she moved into one of her pieces and the piano responded to every touch, every emotion she put into it. It was like the instrument could read her mind, could feel what she was trying to express. She got lost in the music, forgot about the empty seats and the massive space. For a few minutes it was just her and the piano and the notes flowing between them. When she finished, she opened her eyes to find Dr. Hayes smiling. "See? The piano knows you belong here." They rehearsed for 2 hours, running through her entire program. Dr. Hayes made small suggestions, adjustments to her timing or dynamics, but mostly he just let her play. By the time they finished, Maya felt slightly more confident, slightly less terrified. "Go rest now," Dr. Hayes said. "Eat something light. Stay hydrated. And Maya?" He waited until she met his eyes. "Trust yourself. You've already done the hard work. Now you just need to show everyone what you can do." In the dressing room, Maya tried to eat the sandwich her mother had packed, but her stomach was in knots. She could hear the hall starting to fill with people, their voices creating a low rumble that seeped through the walls. Mrs. Chen sat with her, telling stories about her other students, about funny moments from recitals over the years, anything to distract Maya from the clock ticking closer to showtime. What none of them knew was that Richard Caldwell had decided to attend the concert. He'd spent the last week in a dark place, watching his reputation crumble, watching business deals fall apart, watching his wife pull further and further away from him. His lawyer had finally convinced him that he needed to make a public apology, that his stubbornness was destroying everything he'd built. But Richard wanted to see the girl play first. He needed to know if Dr. Vincent Hayes was right about her talent, or if this was all just media hype built on a viral video. He told no one he was coming. He bought a ticket from a reseller for 3 times the face value, one in the very back row where hopefully no one would recognize him. He wore casual clothes, a baseball cap pulled low over his face, sunglasses even though it was evening. Lauren was already there, sitting in the orchestra section with a friend. She'd told Richard she had a business dinner tonight. He spotted her from his seat high in the balcony and felt a pang of guilt. His wife was here supporting a girl he'd humiliated, while he hid in the back like a criminal. The hall was packed. Every seat filled. The energy in the room was electric, everyone buzzing with anticipation. This wasn't a normal classical concert crowd. There were people of all ages, all backgrounds. Many of them had seen the video, had followed Maya's story, and were here to witness what happened next. Richard noticed several news cameras set up in the balcony. This concert was going to be recorded, broadcast. If the girl failed, everyone would see it. If she succeeded, everyone would see that too. The lights began to dim and the crowd quickly quieted. Richard's heart was pounding. He told himself he was here to assess the situation professionally, to see if she really had talent or if this was all manufactured drama. But deep down, he knew the truth. He needed to see what he'd almost destroyed. Dr. Hayes walked onto the stage first, and the audience erupted in applause. He was beloved in the classical music world, and his presence gave this concert serious credibility. He stood at the microphone waiting for the applause to fade. "Good evening," his voice carried through the hall, warm and clear. "Thank you all for being here tonight. This concert series is about something important. It's about making sure that talent, real talent, gets heard regardless of circumstances. It's about opening doors that have been closed for too long. The audience applauded again, knowing exactly what he meant. Tonight's opening performer is someone very special. She's 15 years old. She learned to play piano at a community center on an old keyboard with broken keys. She's never had private lessons until recently. Never attended a prestigious music school. But she has something that cannot be taught. A genuine gift for music. Richard felt his chest tighten. Some of you may have seen a video that circulated recently, showing this young woman being treated with cruelty and disrespect simply for playing a piano. I watched that video and it broke my heart. But it also reminded me why I do what I do, why music matters. Because music doesn't care about your bank account or your zip code or the color of your skin. Music is the great equalizer. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. This young woman could have given up after that experience. She could have decided that maybe she didn't belong in concert halls, that maybe she should make herself smaller, quieter, but she didn't. She chose to rise above the hate and let her music speak for itself. Dr. Hayes paused. Tonight you're going to hear something remarkable. Tonight you're going to hear the sound of pure talent, unpolished by expensive schools but refined by passion and dedication. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maya Johnson. The applause was thunderous as Maya walked onto the stage. Richard leaned forward in his seat, gripping the armrests. Even from this distance, he could see she was nervous. Her steps were careful, measured. She looked so young, so small on that enormous stage. She sat at the piano, adjusting the bench, settling her hands on the keys. The hall fell completely silent. Thousands of people holding their breath, waiting. Maya lifted her hands, hesitated for just a fraction of a second, and then began to play. The first notes rang out clear and true, filling the massive space with sound. Richard recognized the piece, a classical work that required serious technical skill. And Maya played it beautifully. Her fingers moved with confidence and precision, drawing music from the piano that seemed to float through the air. But it wasn't just technical. There was something else in her playing, something Richard hadn't expected. Emotion, depth. She wasn't just hitting the right notes at the right time. She was telling a story, expressing feelings that words couldn't capture. The audience was mesmerized. Richard looked around and saw people leaning forward, completely absorbed. Some had their eyes closed, just listening. Others watched Maya's hands move across the keys with wonder. She moved through her program piece by piece, each one showcasing a different aspect of her talent. Classical works that proved her technical ability. Contemporary pieces that showed her versatility. Each one met with enthusiastic applause that Maya acknowledged with small, shy bows. Lauren, sitting in the orchestra section, had tears streaming down her face. This was the girl her husband had dismissed as worthless. This brilliant, talented, beautiful human being that he'd tried to silence. And then Maya announced her final piece. Her voice was soft but steady as she spoke into the microphone. This last piece is something I wrote myself. It's called Unsilenced. It's about finding your voice even when the world tells you to be quiet. It's about remembering that you matter, that your dreams matter, no matter what anyone says. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play her own composition. Richard felt something break open inside his chest. The music started gentle but uncertain, like tentative steps. Then it grew darker, more turbulent, capturing pain and fear and humiliation. He could hear his own cruel words in those notes, could feel the hurt he'd caused. But then the music changed. It climbed higher, grew stronger, transformed into something triumphant and free. It was the sound of someone refusing to be broken, someone choosing to rise above hate and find their own light. The piece built to a powerful crescendo, Maya's entire body moving with the music, her face radiating pure joy and determination, and then it resolved into something peaceful, something content. Like coming home after a long journey. When the final note faded, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then the entire hall exploded. The standing ovation went on and on. People weren't just clapping, they were cheering, whistling, shouting. Maya sat frozen at the piano, overwhelmed by the sound washing over her. She'd never heard anything like it in her life. Dr. Hayes walked onto the stage, his own eyes glistening with emotion. He embraced Maya while the applause continued, then gently guided her to center stage for a proper bow. The crowd only roared louder. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hayes said when the noise finally died down enough for him to speak. "I believe we've just witnessed the birth of a star." More applause. Maya's face was wet with tears, but she was smiling wider than she'd ever smiled. In the front row, her mother was sobbing openly, and Mrs. Chen had her arm around her, both of them radiating pride. Backstage after the performance, Maya was surrounded by people. Music critics wanted interviews. Other performers congratulated her. Staff members asked for selfies. It was chaotic and wonderful and completely overwhelming. A woman from a prestigious music conservatory approached with a scholarship offer.
"Full tuition," she said.
"Room and board, everything. We'd be honored to have you." Maya could barely process the words. A full scholarship to a school she'd only dreamed about from a distance, thinking it was reserved for other people, better people, people who weren't like her. "Thank you," she managed to say. "Thank you so much." More offers came throughout the evening. Recording opportunities, invitations to perform at other venues. A talent agent handed her mother a business card, saying they should talk about representation. Through it all, Dr. Hayes stayed close, helping Maya navigate the attention, making sure she wasn't overwhelmed. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," he reminded her. "Just enjoy this moment. You've earned it." High in the back balcony, Richard Caldwell remained in his seat long after most people had left. His hands were shaking. He'd watched that entire performance feeling like someone was holding a mirror up to his soul, forcing him to see what he'd become. That girl, that incredibly talented girl, had almost given up music because of him. She'd almost let his cruelty silence something precious and rare. The thought made him physically ill. He finally stood and made his way out of the hall, keeping his head down. Outside, the autumn air felt cold against his face. Groups of concert-goers stood on the sidewalk, still talking excitedly about Maya's performance. "That original composition was unbelievable," someone said. "I've never heard anything like it." "And to think she's only 15, another person added. "Imagine what she'll be able to do with proper training." Richard walked past them quickly, heading to where he'd parked several blocks away. He needed to think. He needed to figure out what he was going to do with this crushing weight of guilt sitting on his chest. When he got home, Lauren was already there. She was sitting in the living room, still in her concert clothes, holding a glass of wine. "You were there," she said. It wasn't a question. Richard stopped in the doorway. "How did you know?" "I saw you leaving. You weren't as invisible as you thought." Lauren looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "So now you know. Now you've heard her play. Was it what you expected?" Richard couldn't speak for a moment. His throat felt tight. "No," he finally said. She was extraordinary." "Yes, she was." Lauren set down her glass. "That's the girl you humiliated, Richard. That brilliant, talented, beautiful human being is the person you treated like garbage." "I know," Richard said quietly. "I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you almost took from the world? If she'd given up, if she'd let your cruelty break her, we might never have heard that music. That's what your prejudice and pride almost destroyed." Richard sank into a chair, feeling like he might be sick. "What do I do? How do I fix this?" Lauren looked at him for a long time. "I don't know if you can fix it, Richard. But maybe you can start by being honest. Actually honest, not the carefully worded statements your PR team keeps drafting." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He kept hearing Maya's composition in his head, kept seeing her face when he'd called security, when he'd tried to have her and her mother thrown out. He'd looked at her and seen nothing worth respecting. He'd been so wrong. The next morning, Richard did something he hadn't done in years. He wrote something himself. No PR team, no lawyers reviewing every word, just him putting his thoughts on paper honestly. He wrote about growing up wealthy, about how privilege had insulated him from understanding what other people faced. He wrote about the video, about how watching himself on camera had been like seeing a stranger, someone cruel and small. He wrote about attending the concert, about hearing Maya play, about understanding too late what real worth looks like. And then he wrote an apology. Not a corporate statement designed to protect his image, but a real apology acknowledging the harm he'd caused. He posted it on every social media platform, knowing it would be picked apart, knowing many people wouldn't believe it or accept it. But he needed to say it anyway. The response was mixed. Some people appreciated the honesty. Others said it was too little, too late. Many pointed out that apologies don't undo harm, that Richard had only changed his mind after facing consequences. They weren't wrong. Richard knew that, but he also knew he had to start somewhere. A week after the concert, Richard did something else. He set up a scholarship fund, putting a substantial amount of his own money into it. The fund would support young musicians from underprivileged backgrounds, covering lessons, instruments, competition fees, anything they needed to pursue their dreams. He named it the Maya Johnson Scholarship Fund with her permission. When his lawyer contacted Maya's family with the proposal, Maya's mother was suspicious at first. "Why now?" she asked. "Because he got caught?" "Maybe," the lawyer admitted. "But he's also genuinely trying to make amends. The fund is real. The money is committed. It will help a lot of kids." Maya was the one who decided to accept. "If it helps other kids like me," she said, "then something good came from what happened. That's enough." The scholarship fund became Richard's focus. He stepped back from many of his business dealings and started spending time at community centers, talking with young musicians, understanding their struggles. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it was something. Lauren watched her husband change slowly over the following months. She saw him becoming more humble, more aware, more human. It didn't fix everything between them, but it was a start. Maya's life transformed completely. She accepted the conservatory scholarship and threw herself into serious musical training. Dr. Hayes became her mentor, guiding her through the complex world of classical music. She performed at venues across the country, each concert building her reputation. But she never forgot where she came from. Every few months, she returned to the community center where Mrs. Chen still taught piano to kids who couldn't afford fancy schools. Maya would play for them, talk with them, remind them that talent doesn't care about money or circumstances. "You belong wherever your gifts take you," she'd tell them. "Don't let anyone make you feel small." Mrs. Chen eventually retired, and the scholarship fund that Richard established helped dozens of her students continue their education. The old community center got renovated with donations that poured in after Maya's story spread, including a beautiful new piano donated by the Grandmont Hotel itself, with a plaque that read, "For all who dream of making music." Maya's mother took the promotion at the hotel but also started studying for a degree in social work. She wanted to help other families facing the struggle she'd faced. "Maya showed me it's never too late to chase something better," she explained. Years later, Maya performed at Carnegie Hall. The concert was sold out months in advance. She was 21 now, a recognized talent in the classical music world, with recordings and awards and a bright future ahead of her. In the audience that night sat her mother, Mrs. Chen, now in her 70s, Dr. Hayes beaming with pride, and in the back, Richard and Lauren Caldwell. Richard had asked permission to attend through Maya's agent, and Maya had said yes. During intermission, Richard waited nervously in the lobby. He'd asked if he could speak with Maya briefly after the performance, knowing she might say no, that she had every right to refuse. But after the concert, after another standing ovation, Maya agreed to see him in her dressing room. Dr. Hayes and her mother stayed with her, protective but allowing the conversation. Richard looked older now, humbler. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just wanted to tell you in person what I've never properly said. I'm sorry. I was cruel and prejudiced, and I almost robbed the world of your gift. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you and your mother. And I'm grateful, truly grateful that you didn't let my ugliness stop you from becoming who you were meant to be." Maya looked at him for a long moment. She thought about that day in the hotel, how small he'd made her feel, how his words had haunted her, but she also thought about everything that came after, about the strength she'd found, about the music that poured out of her pain and became something beautiful. "I forgive you," she said simply, "not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. You taught me something important even if you didn't mean to. You taught me that other people's hate can't define my worth. Only I can do that." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he whispered. As he left, Maya turned to her mother and smiled. "You know what? I think I finally understand what that piano was trying to tell me that first day." "What's that, baby?" "That I was always good enough. I was always worthy. I just needed to believe it myself." Maya looked around the dressing room at the flowers and congratulations cards, at the people who loved her, and now I do. Outside the concert hall, life moved on. People rushed past on their way home, unaware of the small moment of grace that had just occurred inside. But somewhere in the city, A young girl sat at a piano in a community center, playing with all her heart, dreaming of stages she hadn't yet imagined. And maybe, just maybe, someone was listening who would help her find her way there, who would remind her that her music mattered, that she mattered, regardless of what anyone else thought, because that's how change happens. Not in grand gestures or viral moments, but in quiet decisions to be better, to lift others up, to remember that everyone deserves a chance to be heard. Maya's story didn't end that night. It was just beginning. But the girl who once played a piano she wasn't supposed to touch had learned the most important lesson of all. Her voice couldn't be silenced unless she chose to be quiet, and Maya had chosen to sing.